salutations to the nations. What's good, Angel Knots? It's your boy Young Sinai.
Angel Knot.
All right. So this is why now is the golden age of retro gaming. All right, let's go ahead and check it out.
Close, I've definitely realized something, that a lot of these big AAA games that came out this past year just didn't really resonate with me. Now, sure, there's exceptions to the rule. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a great way to end off 2024 with arguably the best game that I've played this year. Presentation, gameplay, everything from top to bottom is just absolutely top notch, and I've been having an absolute joy playing this game. Before that, we had Batman VR, which was my game of the year.
It's so funny how
Boy, playing this.
if you watch RDT 85, I know who this is, but I could not think of his name just because it's so late at night. But he always says, I am not a Nintendo YouTuber. And he's wearing this huge Nintendo 64 hoodie. That's hilarious. Is he trolling?
This game. Before that, we had Batman VR, which was my game of the year. Familiar, but felt fresh because of the fact that you had the VR controls. And Astrobot was a really good 3D platformer. But games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth didn't really hit all that well with me. A little too much padding. Star Wars Outlaws just wasn't a good game, and because of that, I found myself playing a lot of retro games this past year. Obviously, N64 has been in the forefront of my mind by writing The Art of N64 Wrestling.
I feel like indie games are like carrying the video game industry now.
Games book available on Amazon right now, link in the description box down below. But I've definitely been enjoying a lot of retro games, and as I sort of sit back and think about it, I realize something. This is the golden era of retro video games. We have it so good right now, and I feel like not enough people fully realize this. I know MVG made a video similar to this on Monday. Maybe it was a little bit of an inspiration, but he's a bald English man. I am an Italian man that is not bald, but my hair is very nappy. But I want to talk about just how good retro gaming is right now, and all the
I don't know if I've ever heard a white person call their hair nappy.
benefits of it and all the different ways that we can experience this. Because if we're talking about you only have the latest and greatest consoles, the Nintendo Switch or a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series system, you still have a wealth of options available to you. Nintendo Switch, of course, has the Nintendo Switch Online program that offers games from the NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and the Nintendo 64. Now, yes, I do prefer the old virtual console style because you had a little bit more freedom in there, but I do think that the emulation
And you actually own the games.
being used on the Nintendo Switch Online is definitely a bit improved over what we saw on the Wii U. And more importantly, Nintendo seems to be taking it a little more seriously, as they did fix some problematic issues that popped up in The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And there is the availability to play these games online as well with your friends. So although it is clunky and sometimes it doesn't work all that well, it is a nice option to have. Over on the PlayStation, you of course have the PlayStation Network, which has a wealth of different titles ranging from the PS1 to the PS4 era that you can play. You can download these games, buy these games, play them via a subscription service, use the cloud for PlayStation 3 games, but the variety seems to be growing and growing. Same thing with Xbox. You have a bunch of original Xbox games and Xbox 360 games, either on Game Pass or where you could purchase them, and these games are all enhanced. They have better visuals, they have better frame rates than the original versions of the game did. But beyond that, you have more stuff. You could buy individual arcade-related games and different compilations that have come out for all of these systems, ranging from Atari to Sega, with the, obviously Sega pulled the Genesis Classics collection, but at one time you could buy that. But then you even have stuff like Antstream that's available on PlayStation 5 and Xbox, which gives you over 1,400 more retro games with online leaderboards and competitions and stuff like that. And they're constantly adding in more games, and it's not that expensive to get into the Antstream system. So I think people just don't necessarily look at their modern stuff and realize just how much retro that you can actually do on these systems. Yes, there's not a traditional backwards compatibility, but you could play a good variety of stuff on these systems and sometimes get them in enhanced formats that you couldn't get on the original hardware. I think it's a very important thing, and it's something that I hope continues to grow so that there is more variety, that there are more games, because there should be more stuff that is available on these platforms. And then, of course, you have emulation and all the achievements that have been done with emulation. Just a few years ago, the talks about PS3 or Xbox 360 emulation seemed like absolute hogwash. Like, how are we going to be able to do that? Those systems
Right. I remember I put I'm gonna let him finish this sentence,
have weird architecture. Who knows? But then you have emulators like RCPS3 and Xenia for.
I remember I was in a Facebook group a few years back, and I had just gotten into retro handhelds and stuff, and I was like, yo, is there any retro handhelds that can play PS2? People were killing me in the comments, just cracking up laughing like, dude, no. Now it's like it's nothing.
For the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 respectively that are emulating a lot of the games. And in the case of the PlayStation 3, we're getting crazy levels of compatibility and even enhancements in these games. And as these emulators continue to grow, it's not like we get to a point where they're necessarily satisfied with the emulator. All these people that are diehard retro gaming fans are trying to push the medium of emulation and push what you can do on limited hardware as well. You don't need a crazy rig to run a lot of PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 games. And with every major update to these emulators, the entry bar gets lower and lower and lower. And we're seeing fantastic results. I mean, you can upscale 5 times, 6 times, 8 times PlayStation 2 games on pretty much anything. And these games look absolutely gorgeous. As that level of entry barrier gets lower and lower for a system specification, I think it kind of opens the doors a bit more into people getting involved into emulation. And then, of course, you have all the mini PCs. Look at all the different mini PCs I've covered on.
I was just looking at mini PCs today. I had got a Ken Hank hard drive. I had got the console. I can't even think of what it's called. But I was having some issues with that, not on their part, but on my part. Like, I dropped that thing. Oh my gosh. And so I got to figure out a new solution. Let me know if you got any ideas.
On this channel, I think the most expensive one was like $400, and I'm playing PlayStation 3, Nintendo Switch, Xbox 360 games on these mini PCs.
I did like a whole video, like an unboxing and everything, and I can't even give a full true impression, so I'm probably not even gonna release the video.
Shouldn't be able to do that, but because of the optimization of the emulators themselves, we've come a very, very long way in a very short period of time. And hell, you've even got PS4 emulations starting to creep up in places now. And with Shad's PS4, which is the new PS4 emulator that's out there, I think the sky's the limit. I would expect by the end of 2025 that there's going to be quite a few games that you can play through and complete via Shad's PS4 emulator, emulating PlayStation 4 on your rig. But that's just kind of one side of retro gaming, because we have a whole nother side when it comes to it, and that's people who don't want to mess with emulators. They don't want to mess with setting up stuff, even though it is very easy nowadays, and there are hard drives preloaded with all the games and ROMs and stuff like that. They don't want to mess with a computer. They want a handheld. They want a console. They want something that's tangible in their hand, that feels familiar, but does better things. Well, we're in the golden era of that as well.
Yeah,
look
absolutely.
at all the emulation handhelds that come out all the time from companies like Anbernic. It seems like every week a revision for an Anbernic product comes out. And yes, sometimes those revisions aren't necessarily needed, but there's so many different companies out there like Anbernic, like Retroid, that are making these handheld emulation devices where the power of these things, the things that you're able to do with them at a low price point that come preloaded, are just absolutely amazing. We really have to thank China for being the kings of emulation, because they're the ones keeping emulation in such good spirits right now. We're seeing all these ROM and emulator websites go down, it seems like every single day. But in China, where there is no copyright laws with stuff like this, they don't care. They're just loading up these hard drives, loading up these handhelds, loading up all these different things.
I don't know if I knew that. I don't know if I knew that there weren't these types of laws in China. Like, that makes a lot of sense. I might be dumb for not knowing that.
And you are
Hit like if I'm dumb.
reaping the rewards of these things. You could buy $100 handheld off of Amazon that comes with like PS2 and GameCube games, Dreamcast and stuff. And right then and there, you're right in with the retro gaming scene. Let's say you want something a little bit different though. You want a console that you could play on your HD television, but you don't want to spend a lot of money. Now, your options are a bit more limited when it comes to things like that, but there are things like the NES, the SNES Classic, the PS1 Classic, of course, you have the Genesis Classic as well. There are classic systems out there, but the more interesting ones are these knockoff systems that you end up seeing that come preloaded with a bunch of other games and stuff. Let's say you have a cartridge collection or a disc collection of something. There are options for you too. There are various clone consoles out there, whether you're talking about the high dollar ones from companies like Analog or the budget entry price points of stuff like Hyperkin consoles. You could play a lot of different consoles on these devices. You want to play SNES, Genesis, and NES games? There's a console out there for you, either by Hyperkin or Retrobit. Retails for about $80. You plug it in, you stick a cartridge in, and then bam, you're playing these games. Now, the emulation might be a little bit off and the colors might not be as good as you once remembered them, but I feel like if you're getting in at that price point, you're not necessarily worried about things like that. You obviously know what you're getting.
I mean, the colors are probably better. I mean, let's be real. We're playing on like HD TVs, versus like a CRT. I know that some of you all think it's blasphemy saying that, but I'm just saying, like, objectively speaking, it's better technology, even though that may have been a more fun way to play it. I hope y'all get what I'm saying. Y'all go kill me in the comments. I don't care.
And people that buy those things are definitely more impulse buys than diehard retro gaming fans. But still, like, it's still being able to play retro games on your modern television, which is something that everyone wants and something everyone always thinks is something too big to handle, something even larger. But okay, let's say you are the diehard. All right, I only want to play original hardware with original controllers that are originally from the original system, and like that's
You finna spend some real money.
your mantra. You're covered there too. The amount of things that have been done in the retro gaming scene is absolutely astronomical. Things like N64 HDMI mods. Look at my video comparing a $200 modded N64 system to a $700 one, and tell me the differences between them. Tell me. Because aside from having more options that you can sort of fine dial in to your television screen, the $200 one absolutely kills it. There are so many HDMI mods for various systems that allow you to do things, and there are companies out there that will do the modifications for you. You send in your system, and they will send it back to you with an HDMI modification. You want to be able to play the full library of games? You've got EverDrives. Look at the EverDrive 64. I absolutely love that thing. Being able to play ROM hacks on my original Nintendo 64 that's HDMI modded out with an N64 controller is just absolutely fantastic. Even Saturn users are living really well right now with Saru, which is a cartridge that you plug into your Sega Saturn that I actually have, and I need to make a video on it. But you plug this cartridge into your Sega Saturn's cartridge slot, and then it plays the games. You don't have to worry about the disc anymore. The loading is extremely
That's dope. I didn't know that existed.
fast, and it's exact perfect emulation on your Sega Saturn. It's emulating the software, not the hardware of the Sega Saturn, and it's absolutely perfect and a fraction of the price of Sega Saturn games. Of course, you have different controller options as well. Maybe you want a N64 style controller, but you want something that's a little bit more comfortable. There's tons of companies making stuff, ranging from Hyperkin and their cheaper entry price points to stuff like Retro Fighters, which make great controllers for the Nintendo 64. You get wireless Saturn controllers, wireless PS1 controllers, whatever you want. And that's the thing. That's the beauty right now. Because these prices for these kinds of games here, crazy. Absolutely ridiculous prices. But you don't have to pay them. You could buy a reproduction cartridge of N64 or Sega Saturn games and get the exact same experience. Same thing with your Earthbounds and your Chrono Triggers. You don't want to pay the full price? Buy a reproduction cartridge. You know, this whole retro gaming market is going to implode on itself one day. And I don't think that's necessarily, the end of the world with it. People.
That's what I might do with Game Boy is get the reproduction cartridges. I don't know. I was thinking, should I get because I want to get a modded Game Boy. I have a regular Game Boy. But I think I want to get a modded one. But I do not want to pay the prices that they are charging for Game Boy games these days on eBay. It's ridiculous. So maybe I'll get the reproduction. I was thinking about just getting the one that, I can't remember what it's called, but basically you put the SD card in. Let me know what y'all think, if y'all have any experience with either of those.
People are going to pay what they want to pay. And there will always be people who do want the authentic experience and who do want the original thing. But if you're not one of those people and you don't mind, you don't have a CRT TV laying around so that you could play it, or a PVM monitor or something like that, you have so many options at your fingertips. Like, it's never been better. It's never been better. And I think as time goes on, it'll continue to get better as well. As emulators become more advanced, as PC prices come down, and, more companies get involved in this sphere, there's a lot of money to be made in this sphere. And unfortunately, sometimes you get some bad apples that try and cash in on nostalgia. Television Amico, oh, you, Tommy. But for the most part, like, companies understand that they're going to get feedback. Companies understand that they'll live and die by their first product into the marketplace. And I think that's a good thing. Retro gaming is a beautiful thing. And although there's a lot of snobs in the community and a lot of sort of people within it, the average person isn't like that. You know what I'm saying? The average person is cool. And the average person understands that,
if somebody's getting into a hobby, do not be one of those gatekeepers, okay? You guys are so lame. Like, if somebody has, like, a genuine question, don't make people feel stupid. Like how I mentioned earlier, how people made me feel stupid about asking about PlayStation 2 on emulators. Like, just answer the freaking question. Be thankful that somebody's coming into the hobby.
An RGB modded system on a CRT or PVM system is an ideal way to play it. But there's also cheaper options, and there's other options for people that just want to play some games, that don't necessarily care about replicating the complete authentic experience. They just want to experience some of the games from their past. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I talked a lot longer than I thought I was going to talk, but I feel like there's a lot of different things to say with this. And I think we are in the golden era of retro gaming, and I think people need to appreciate it a little bit more. It's never been as easy as it is right now in this moment to play a lot of retro games. From I didn't even mention stuff like, I'm looking over here at my Evercade, the Evercade Versus system, which is a system that plays Evercade cartridges, and they're doing stuff like Legacy of Kain. They're doing stuff.
Is that what I'm thinking? No, that's not the Evercade. What is the thing called? I cannot remember right now.
Like Tomb Raider collections. They're doing stuff like Duke Nukem. And
no,
it's awesome.
I know what the Evercade is.
It's a cheap console with cheap around $20 cartridges that you can play on your HD television. The options, my friends, are endless. And all that matters at the end of the day is that you're enjoying the games. I don't care how you play them. You want to emulate, you want to pirate, you want to do this, that, or the other. As long as you're enjoying video game history, that's all that really matters to me. Let me know in the comment section down below, though. What do you think about it?
Yo, that's what's up. Hey, RGT, he was cooking. You know what I'm saying? He was definitely cooking. But all right, y'all. I appreciate you tuning in, and salutations to the nations.
Angel Knot.